20% of all people in the US have already started to own crypto and bought crypto in the past. That statistic within China is just about 3 to 5%, right? So there's a huge side of the population that haven't really got involved.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Profit to the People, the official podcast of Republic, where we believe you have the power to invest in the future you believe in. I'm your host, Lisa Carmen Wang, and I'll be taking you behind the scenes to meet our team, founders, and investors in our community who share their insights on the future of investing and how they're bringing profit to the people. If you're interested in investing, head over to republic.co and follow us on all socials at Join Republic and at Lisa Carmen Wang. Today, I'm here with David Gan. He's the founder and general partner at OP Crypto, a venture capital fund that invests in promising blockchain entrepreneurs in Asia. Prior to founding OP Crypto, David served as a senior executive at Huobi Global. He was also the senior investment director of Huobi Capital. David has experience at top traditional firms, including Qiming Venture Partners and Morgan Stanley China, and he was recognized in 2019 for the Forbes 30 Under 30 Asia Award. Today, we'll be talking about investing in crypto in Asia, an area where David is an expert in, and talking about some of the differences between the Western and Eastern markets and what you can expect. So this will be sure to be a very enlightening conversation. David, welcome to Profit to the People.
Thank you for having me, Lisa.
So to get us started, can you tell us a bit about your background as an investor? How did you get started investing in crypto?
Yeah, so this actually started when I was in school. So, obviously, given my prior background as an investment banker, I actually started my own startup after being an iBanker. And when I exited the startup, I went on to the business school in China, which I ended up, getting a bulk of my China resources, started to figure out what I wanted to do next and also find out more about the China market. So that's where I started to pay more attention to the crypto market. Participated more so as a retail capacity before venturing forth to lead Huobi's investment arm, starting from 2018 into the more institutional venture investments. So that's what I advocate everyone to start looking into, no matter if you're a student in school, no matter if you're sort of just working on other projects and having a full-time job elsewhere. But I think it's a space where anyone and everyone can get into with all the information they're able to get within the internet and be able to participate not only just as a retail investor, but I think just a ton of resources can be done on both ends.
So as a venture investor now, why have you chosen to focus on the Asian market?
Yeah, I think that's where the bulk of the upside will come to be in the coming years. So as you can see in the Web2 space, some of the best technology came from the US and the Western markets, but some of the best applications are ultimately built in China and the greater APAC region. So I think going forward right now is that you're able to see a unicorn coming out of the Asian market every other day. And I think there will be a huge paradigm shift going forward where more and more projects are coming out of Asia and starting to build their presence. You're already able to see some of the biggest projects like Terra, like Amber Group, like CoinGecko, some of the biggest names in the space, not even including some of the big exchanges like Huobi, Binance, OKX, all came from the Asian markets. So I think, as we sort of have more of the infrastructure ready on the layer one protocol side, I think now you're able to see some more practical applications being built on top. And, in addition to that, like Asia has by far the largest retail market and by far the highest working capital being put into this market. So definitely, there's a ton of upside to capture. One quick statistic is that 20% of all people in the US have already started to own crypto and bought crypto in the past. That statistic within China is just about 3 to 5%, right? So there's a huge side of the population that haven't really got involved. And it's even less of a percentage in Southeast Asia. So there's still a lot of growth waiting to happen. And, hopefully we're there to capture a lot of the upside once the markets are ready.
So then kind of diving into that, what are some of the greatest differences that you see between the Asian crypto market and the US?
The most talented developers are still in the US. So I think with regards to some of the projects being built on the Western markets, it's more so a lot more infrastructure heavy, protocol heavy, where they're sort of building the underlying, roads and picks and shovels for what is coming to be the Web3 future. Whereas China, it's a lot more, application focused, a lot more sort of trading, custody oriented type of products where it allows, the greater mass retail population to get their hands on some of these native crypto assets. I think the most heavily, traded tokens are all getting more adoption from Asia, but most of, as you can see in the top 100 on the coin market cap, are all natively within the Western markets, right? But all the biggest exchanges, liquidity providers, market makers are all in Asia.
Interesting. One thing that I think is on people's minds, given some of the recent news around China banning all crypto-related activities in the country, everything from investing to mining, and that being a really big deal, given that China is home to a massive proportion of the world's crypto miners. And one stat I read is that the country's investors received crypto transfers worth 150 million just in the first half of the year alone. And so this will have some really big impact in terms of both production and use. What is your high-level take on what's happening right now in the country and how this will affect us going forward?
I think how China likes to think about it is that before they have a very good way to govern the whole situation, or before they come up with rules how to really better facilitate the ecosystem forward, they tend to like to shut everything down, right? Before they sort of have the ample time to figure out, what is best for the industry going forward, right? It's kind of like, instituting the security laws for different tokens here in the US. I think China is trying to institute some similar laws protecting their retail customers against some of these sort of native crypto purchases, or like just making sure that they have sort of best accreditation, as well as, the best sort of understanding of the space before they're going in and purchasing some of these assets. But also at the same time, China has a very strict, monetary control policy, right? I think what we're seeing in the crypto markets today is that like all the money that's being made off of crypto and all the money that's being made off of mining are not being put back into the China market and China's economy. So a lot of that money is essentially, going overseas, to alter types of neighboring jurisdictions. I think in China wants to have, they definitely see this as a high growth potential market, and definitely doesn't want to be left behind in the Web3 space. But at the same time, they want to make sure that a lot of that usage is incremental and accretive to what the China government is looking to promote. And with sort of their launch of the DCEP, which is China's native digital currency, it actually shows that, the China government is very supportive of the technology, very supportive of using digital assets as a means of payment. But right now they're just sort of taking this time to really figure out what is the best way to govern the space before opening things back up again.
And so as an investor in the Asian market, how do you think about your investments in China as it pertains to what's happening in the current environment?
Yeah, so I think it's ultimately a very global phenomenon, right? So like, it's not like, I think one of the things I'm able to do very well is that, half the team is based here in the US and half is in Asia. Obviously a bulk of my investments will be in Asia, while some are invested in the US. But I think what I really bring to the table of having that very international background and being supported by some of the largest institutional players here in the US is help, some of the best Chinese entrepreneurs or Asia entrepreneurs, get that Western traction, or helping them sort of find that, global market share that they're able to tap into, right? So like previously, China has just been very siloed into, just capturing the market as it is, because China is always, one of the top markets, and it doesn't even matter in whatever space that you're in. But I think as crypto has opened up the global markets, just having the China market is not enough at all, right? Like to give an example, like Huobi started off as just serving to the China market alone, but right now we've expanded to over 170 countries, serving over 30 million users across the globe, right? So I think everything starts from China, but ultimately needs that global visibility, and that's some of the thing that I'm able to provide with having sort of roots on both ends of the spectrum and having investors in all types of jurisdictions around the world.
Got it. So we've briefly touched on the regulatory environment in China, but what are some additional challenges for uptake and mainstream adoption of crypto in all areas of Asia?
I think first of all, with Asia, you can't think of it as just Asia, right? As that huge big entity, and everything is sort of consolidated into one. I think Korea is very much different from Japan, and China is very different from Vietnam and Thailand. But I think one common issue that all sort of Asia projects face is that there's a huge language barrier, right? Like a lot of founders are not natively well-spoken English, right? So I think being able to really attract audiences globally, you have to have a very good sort of ties to the Western world, right? So sometimes that means bringing on someone that very much understands the Western market very well. It's just very hard for someone to have a good understanding on both sides. So I think definitely language barrier is an issue. Secondly, it's like a lot of people didn't really have that like very global sort of access, right? Like they've all been sort of just siloed within their own jurisdictions, right? Like Chinese people very rarely leave China, right? Like I think that's sort of without saying that they need to really go out and try and explore, other countries or other sort of markets to be able to have a good understanding of what's happening outside of China, right? So, I for one have been to over 50 countries in the past, couple years, not only to help Huobi set up all of its satellite offices across the world, but I think ultimately just increasing my visibility of the global markets and being able to pass on some of my expertise to some of the founders there, right? But I think these two are some of the biggest problems that they face right now.
And going back to your comment around not looking at Asia as a block, but as kind of individuals, could you walk us through some of the specifics that you're seeing in Japan and Korea and some of the Southeast Asian countries, and what are the differences?
Sure. So I mean, like for example, Japan, right? It's very, very regulated, right? Like there aren't that many like very native blockchain projects coming out of Japan at all, right? I think bulk of the trading volume still is BTC. Like ETH is not even very dominant in Japan. And there's very little capital being put forth in the Japanese market in terms of like venture capital money, right? And you can see this like in terms of like traditional venture capital as well, right? A lot of the markets there are not, very readily, the Western markets are getting involved in, right? So very regulated. It's very hard. Like we even bought like we had to acquire an exchange in Japan for Huobi to be able to access the market, but still, due to regulations, it was still very hard to get traction. I think Korea, it's like I wouldn't say it's the exact opposite, but like Korea, just like everything flies, right? You often hear the term of the kimchi premium, right? Like people usually pay premium for all types of assets on the markets right now, right? So I think like for Korea, the numbers are like, don't quote me on this, but I think it's like 40 or 50% of all people in Korea own crypto. It's just like an astronomical number. And it's not just like BTC and ETH, right? There's a lot of projects coming out of Korea that are very bullish in the crypto space, like Kakao, like Clayton, like even some of the institutions like Samsung, they're looking into enterprise blockchain. Like it's a very sort of crypto blockchain heavy market, right? And constantly, you see some of the biggest exchanges are in China, and very next to it is all the Korea exchanges, right? And I think it got so much so that even the Korean market is looking to have some regulations on that. I think all future exchanges will need some sort of licensing, and they'll need all the bank approvals, and they're just getting a little bit more strict on that. With regards to some of the other Southeast Asia, I mean, there's a lot, right? But I think, by far, Indonesia is one of the bigger markets out there. And even them too, we have established Huobi Indonesia. There's Indodex, there's a number of exchanges there. But I think in terms of just like active crypto projects being built out of Indonesia's ecosystem, there hasn't been much. But as you can see, Indonesia is probably like the fourth or fifth most populous country in the world, and there's quite a lot of retail traction coming from that area. But also very Vietnam, Thailand, and obviously Philippines was like the first to start like the play to earn whole genre. So companies like Axie, there's equivalents of those in sort of the other Southeast Asia jurisdictions, but definitely Philippines was the first to like really start off, this whole era and making this as sort of a new meta that will stick. Not necessarily saying that Axie will just be sort of the go-to game going forward, but I think this is a model that will stick, and more games will come out of it.
And so then tell us about your thought process, and maybe you can share some of your investments in certain companies and why you chose to invest in those companies.
So I think being an early stage fund as we are, we always look for the best entrepreneurs that we can find that's building towards verticals that we believe in, right? So I think we like to take a more thesis-driven approach where it's like, hey, this is a niche that has yet been filled in the space that very much has a lot of upside going forward. And we'll try to find the best entrepreneurs building towards those goals. We're looking to solve some of those challenges, right? So we're very big onto the DAO infrastructure, social tokens. And this speaks to sort of my native background as a founder myself. I started a social network, grew it to 10 million plus users, sold it to a listed company. A lot of that skill set was not transferable or translatable to really the crypto native investment side. But as we see more and more, adoption on the social token side, as well as, the DAO, the investment DAOs or the venture DAOs, the communities themselves are now, geared to more better incentive structures for some of the best creators, influencers, and contributors, because none of those people are hireable, right? Like in terms of like Facebook or Instagram, all of their highest performing artists are all like freelancers or people that kind of have that special talent that there's incentive model, right? So to better align those models in the Web3 space are sort of people that we think can create a more decentralized incentive structure that allows the contributors to be compensated properly and having the right infrastructure to do so, right? But again, I think we're still very early on in the space. It's a lot more founder driven, always looking for the best founders, and I think that's always like something we'll love to take referrals from. Like I myself, in conjunction to Huobi, have invested in over 70 deals in the space, and a lot of these founders are looking to be second, third time founders, and they're sort of within that founders network. So anytime I take a referral from another founder, that's something that we're definitely excited to look at because it comes from a reference check of a prior founder that we've backed, and just like growing on that sort of network and being able to capture those founders at a very early going and being able to help them think through product market fit, token economics, and go to market is some of the things that we're able to provide as value add in the firm.
Awesome. What are some of the areas that you are most bullish on as you look towards some future investments?
Yeah. So as I mentioned before, it's very much big on social tokens, due to my prior background, the DAO infrastructure side of things, really like, having treasury management, having sort of the employment retentions, all things that you think exist today in like a more corporate governance structure, but set that aside into a more DAO governance structure, right? Very big on like the different financial primitives that are going to be soon built on chain. Like I'm sort of in the belief where like eventually everything will be built on chain in some way or form. So all the sort of different financial products, whether it's like derivatives, options, insurance plays, or some of these collateralization plays, ultimately all can be sort of built on chain to make it more transparent, more easily accessible, and unlocks that global liquidity to sort of the greater global markets, right? So, I mean, those are some of the things that obviously I think we as a venture firm have prior expertise to and are more bullish on, as well as looking to bring like the existing DeFi market that's taking off pretty handsomely in the Western markets, and help them go to market in Asia and finding those products that are natively fitting for the Asia market, right? As you know, DeFi has been everything that people has talked about for the past year or so, but in Asia, not very many people are even using any of the DeFi products, right? So looking to really fill that void there, and giving them the right resources to be able to do so.
So, I mean, even to that point of, there's still some slower uptick in Asia. What would you say to some of those people who perhaps are still even skeptical around crypto, skeptical about what the future holds, and so how would you break this down in terms of showcasing that this really could be the future?
Yeah, so I think as you really think about it, if everyone believes in something, that's when you lose all the upside, right? So it's like, um, the more skeptical people are, or like the highest percentage of people being skeptical, just means that there are so many people that haven't gone into the space that are interested to find out more, right? So that's how I like to think about it. Ultimately, you don't necessarily have to convince everyone, but I think ultimately having that right sort of skepticism and sort of the right opportunistic mindset allows for better innovation going forward. And always having that sort of that chip on your shoulder where you have to like go out and make a better product than what is existing today. It's incredibly hard, right? And I think in the crypto market, it's sort of just a different paradigm that allows sort of you to own not only a piece of the internet, but like own a piece of like ongoing sort of transformative new technology that is able to shape some of the new financial paradigms of the future.
In terms of like trying to actually help people understand if they're coming from a place where crypto is completely new to them, right? How do you think we can help people at least like grasp the concept or get them more acquainted with it?
Yeah, I think nowadays it's pretty rare to see a place where it's like they've never heard of crypto. I think back like 4 years ago when I first started, that was definitely an uphill battle in itself. And how I used to describe it to people was that like I kind of have to leverage the bigger names, like for example, like JP Morgan or Goldman Sachs, so, use names that people have heard of, 4 years ago. Hey, they're looking to get into crypto. And they're some of the smartest people that we see in sort of the TradFi world, right? And like as more and more of these bigger players looking to get into the game, now like the list is endless, right? Now you can just list like pretty much every institution is in the game. I think right now you just have to point to some of the the already existing institutional lab option that we have, and sort of the growing sort of interest in the space. I think it's much easier argument now than it was tough back 4 years ago. I mean, everyone thought, yeah, I mean, there's a number of names that are being named about the space, but I think definitely, I think our work is cut out for us. But I think at the same time, we still need more and more technical talent, more entrepreneurs to be coming into the space. I think now it's like the investor landscape has become much, much more competitive. But I think in terms of just like the startup space, it's actually pretty wide open, right? Like there's, as long as you are able to build a good team around you and have the initial drive to really make something fairly innovative, you have a ton of capital that's ready to support you. But yeah, the investor, anyone wants to be an investor nowadays. I think right now it's really looking to have that competitive advantage, being an investor and sort of the value add that you're able to provide that differentiate some of the things that we do here.
Could you share some of your reasons why you don't invest in companies that pitch you?
I think a lot of people like to pitch in a way where it's a lot more retail driven, where like, hey, I'm doing this project. The token economics is really good. It's for sure gonna earn money, right? Type of pitch where they're probably right. Like it's gonna earn money, right? And given where the market is today, like venture type of deal, it's almost hard to lose money, right? Because you're always buying in at the price floor of any project. As long as they're able to get liquidity, you're mostly like to make money, right? But I think ultimately we're running a very long-term oriented venture shop where we invest into something and we like to help support it, grow it for the coming, 3 to 5 years or more, right? I think, even if we are able to make a 3 to 5x fairly quickly, um, that like dilutes our returns in the grand scheme of things, right? Like my previous track record before launching my fund was about 15.6 or so x over the past 3 years, right? So if you think about it, if I return anything under 15x, that's not good for sort of my return profile, right? Not saying that, that's sort of the thing that I go by, but I think anytime we invest in a venture type of return, we're looking for um, some of these sort of more home run returns, right? And it's okay if something ultimately doesn't work out, but like I think we're looking for something that's truly innovative and visionary, right? I think you should find people that are not just in it to make money, but in it to really make a difference and make a change in the world. And I really create a product that is able to really sort of be accretive to what the space is doing, and be able to make a sort of truly a differentiated product.
And could you share then some like specific companies in your portfolio that you've recently invested in, or just case studies that really did fit this thesis?
We just recently started like 2 weeks ago, so it's fairly early in the investment horizon of things. But I can give a couple examples of projects I invested at Huobi. One of my highest performing projects was Terra, right? So, this is one of the top, probably the top. Okay, it's definitely the top Asia deal, by far, right? We returned almost 300x over like a 3 year time span. And this is a quote directly from the founder himself. Like Terra is, a algorithmic stable coin. It enables, payments across different merchants within Korea. But at the same time, it's like a factory of factories where it's like you're able to create different practical applications within the Terra ecosystem that facilitates the greater ecosystem as a whole, right? It creates a money market, it creates a yield generating platform, it creates sort of the debit credit card. It's like almost creating a whole ecosystem of like a monetary market in itself, right? So that's definitely exciting in sort of not only acting as a very underlying infrastructure payment play, but growing that into a bigger, more complex financial infrastructure to what it is now today. Um, but I think other than that, there's a number of deals. Polkadot, which is very focused on interoperability. We're one of the earliest investors in Blockfolio, which essentially is a gateway for retail users to get access to crypto and their portfolio management, which was later acquired by FTX as the largest portfolio tracking mobile app. But more recently, I think we're definitely looking into sort of the layer two scalability solutions. Like Connects is a layer two bridge between the different ecosystem and different chains, and playing that in the eventual multi-chain world, like BSC to Heco, or like BSC to Matic type of plays, as well as Stardust, which is like an NFT infrastructure play where different games and the metaverse can be built on top of the existing smart contracts. But yeah, all of the deals you can see on website, they're still very early. But yeah, always actively looking for good entrepreneurs. But again, some of those deals were done while I was still at Huobi, and is warehoused into the fund.
Awesome. Any big learnings or mistakes that you've learned from just in your investing career?
I think it's like a lot of times you can't be too comfortable, right? Like I think there's so many times where I've passed on the project where it was just not very clear what the future bodes for the project. And I just, I was just uncomfortable making the investment, right? And some of those have come to be, some of the most successful projects today, right? Like Solana, right? Or like, I've had early looks for probably all the best protocols out there. Um, there was a couple that, I was still a little bit unwavering. I think some of the best investments that you ultimately make will not be the most comfortable decisions. I think just being able to find that comfort within discomfort is like make the best use of your intuition and take some of those bets into unknown territories that you might not necessarily know how it will end up for you, but a lot of those will be like your eventual home run plays, right?
And so looking forward, when you just think of, some of the exciting areas within the Asian market, what would you say you're most excited about?
Yeah, so I'm definitely excited about DeFi, right? As I mentioned before, um, that's still very nascent. Like no one is even using Uniswap or SushiSwap, let alone all the different derivatives that's gonna be built on the DEXs, right? So as you can see, all the biggest Asia exchanges are having a little bit of trouble with sort of navigating through the China regulatory scheme. So definitely that will cause some shift into some of the DEXs that we see today, but no one really knows. Or I mean, they're not comfortable using DEX because of like the user experience on the UI. It's not as easy as the centralized exchanges where they can just call up someone and place orders for them, right? So, but I think going forward, it's not hard to learn, right? But just I think there needs to be the right education to put forth, right? And definitely very excited about some of the new gaming that's coming out of Asia, right? You can see some of the best games are being made in Asia, and they just have such a large retail base. I think that's why the play to earn games were so popular in Asia because there's such a massive population, and anytime you're able to get a lot of adoption in one application is through games, right? A lot of people talk about gaming is going to be bringing the first 100 million users to the space. I think probably like 80% of that will come from Asia, right? I think that's the bulk of where sort of those users are coming from and already proven so by Axie, right? So yeah, definitely excited about both of those.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for your insights on on investing in crypto in Asia. Final question for you. What does bringing profit to the people mean to you?
Yeah, so I think ultimately, I myself as an investor, right? Like I don't always think about investing for myself or like investing for my LPs or like the people on the team. I think ultimately it's like to be able to fund and support some of the new projects in the space and being part of that bigger goal where like you're benefiting everyone that's participating in the space, right? Which inherently means profit for the people in the long run, right? So I think it's all about making the world around us a better one with sort of injection of capital in the right projects that's building towards that goal, right? So I think that's sort of what we're focused on as an investment firm, but also like even with the money that's being brought in to the space, it will be recycled and constantly deployed back into the space, right? It's all part of that goal in moving the space forward. And the best way to do that is putting more money into people that need it, right? That would take that money and put it into good use, right? I think that's sort of the lesson I learned as an entrepreneur was that sure, I built a product that was used by over 10 million users. I was able to do very well for myself by selling the project. But I think that was very linear growth, right? Where it's like I was able to scale up a project. It's very visible in terms of the number of growth I was able to see. But as an investor, I can, invest in over 50 or even 100 projects and have like that very parabolic growth in terms of having most of these projects do well, then like that actually, I'm part of, making a difference in multiple verticals that is able to sort of overall, be better for everyone that's involved.
Well, thank you so much. Very excited for the future of OP Crypto. Best of luck on your fund. And we are very grateful to have you as part of the Republic family and for joining me on Profit to the People.
Okay, thank you.
This podcast is provided for educational purposes only by Republic and Republic.co. Nothing discussed should be construed as legal, tax, accounting, or investment advice. The views of the presenters may not be the views of Republic and its affiliates. Always consult with trusted professional advisors before making investments. Private investments are inherently illiquid and may result in a total loss. All rights reserved.